Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a while, so I would like to welcome you back to Gotham Chess Recaps, as Benji walks away to the corner to take a nap. It's 2025, it's January, and it is time for Tata Steel, which is referred to as the Wimbledon of chess. Many incredible players have passed through the small Dutch village, and the tournament is very exciting because it's split into the Masters section, and it's split into the Challenger section, where you have a lot of young, talented players, including this year, Faustino Oro, who is now being referred to as the Messi of chess. So, in this video, I'm going to take you through the first 5 rounds. I'm going to show you exciting games from every single round, from both sections, upsets, lower-rated players defeating higher-rated players, and then I will give you an update of the standings at the end. So that's all. All right, it's been a while since I've covered a classical chess tournament. There's no Magnus, no Hikaru, so we're going to see just how much you like chess, all right? Because a lot of you say I only cover Magnus. Well, we're about to find out if you watch tournaments if there's no Magnus Carlsen in them. So, we're going to kick things off with the world champion of chess, Domaraja Gukesh. There is something in my tooth. Okay, now there is no longer something in my tooth. This is the first round of the tournament. Gukesh versus Anish Giri. And there was a viral clip of Anish Giri who did a lie detector test. And he basically said, you know, he name-dropped Gukesh and said, for example, he doesn't necessarily think that Gukesh is stronger than him. It was not an insulting clip. It was just kind of a funny timing. And then Gukesh becomes the world champion. And then they have to play each other in the first round of this tournament. Now, Anish Giri is Dutch. And he has played in this tournament and has won it before. And he's kind of the local hero. And in the opening, we have this variation chosen by white and this variation chosen by black. So we have a ready and black playing in a very principled way, d5, c5, right? And these two knights. And now this move d4. This is referred to as the reverse Grunfeld in many situations. Why is it referred to as that? Well, it's because if you do it backwards, there are variations where black does the exact same thing, striking at the center and putting the bishop here and then castling. And as you can see from this position, that's sort of exactly what white has done. White strikes with the queen's pawn while putting the fianchetto on that side of the board. e6 and now c4. This position has been reached many times. So here, it's actually kind of normal for black to capture on c4. If white wants to kind of kill the game, white can go dc5. And then there's a line, queen d1, rook d1, bishop c5, knight d2 trying to regain the pawn. Black gives it away like this, pawn takes, and this position has been debated a lot. But there's another move, knight a3, where white just gambits the pawn on d4. Gukesh plays queen a4, just putting pressure on the knight e5 ideas, and queen is going to take on c4. We have bishop d7, which attacks which defends the knight and kind of phantom attacks the white queen on a4. dc5 is a nice move, so now that anywhere the black knight moves, it's going to be either not guarded or not really do anything too useful. And from the opening, this is the position. All right, we are 10 moves into the game. This is a typical position for a Catalan player. You will notice that Mr. Giri started the game with 140 on the clock. I don't know why it's 130 here. They start with 140, and every time they make a move, they gain some time. So Anish Giri clearly knows everything, right? He hasn't spent any time at all. Gukesh plays knight to c3. We have castles. And now e4 taking the center. Rook c8 targeting the queen. And the queen drops back to the e2 square. This is obviously the setup that white wants, right? And now from here, white has to play. Pawn structure is symmetrical. Both sides have traded d and c pawns. Maybe white is going to advance in the center. Maybe white is going to attack on the king side. Well, the very first thing that we have out of the opening is Gukesh playing bishop g5 after 35 minutes of thought. And then he doesn't take on f6, he gambits the bishop. g5 simply traps the bishop. I mean, you talk about a young man this is his first game as the world champion. Because he became world champion, and then he went on a media tour, and then he didn't play the World Rapid and Blitz. He was being, lauded and celebrated as a hero in India. This is his first game. It's a lot of pressure. And I would know about pressure, and I don't handle it very well. Gukesh shows up and is like, I'm going to sacrifice a bishop, and that is exactly what he does, all right? And now we have this position. Anish plays e5. to activate his light-scored bishop and not allow any pawns to come forward. Gukesh plays queen d2 and bishop h6, and he is setting up queen g5 and queen g7 checkmate. In a shocking turn of events, Anish sees that, but he has to give up his rook, because obviously, had he moved his rook, the mate would have happened. We have bishop f8 and bishop f8. Now, traditional wisdom here tells you that having the bishop and a knight is better than having a rook. It just is. It's more pieces. Engine also says that, but obviously the computer doesn't think like a human, and these guys are humans. f4, Gukesh going all in. Anish has to stabilize, playing bishop e6. Gukesh playing knight d5, which means probably that knight is going to be traded pretty soon. Now knight b4, a nice counter deflection move. Rook c2 potentially incoming on the second rank. There's going to be targets over here. I wouldn't be surprised if we get the move king h1 at some point, just to get off of the diagonal. So we have pawn takes e5, and now knight g4. I mean, knights are coming in. Also potentially over here. We've got these ideas, like bishop c5 is always there. It's a very tense position. Rook d1, Gukesh down to 12 minutes on the clock. All right. King h8, getting out of the way, and also king h1. Now the kings have been moved to the edges of the board, but Gukesh has 4 minutes. The first game as the world champion, man is already kind of bobbing and weaving on the ropes. And in comes Anish with rook c2. Queen goes out to f4, knight takes d5, and now a nice move here. It's a very nice move, kind of keeping the tension. He could have, of course, taken on d5. Had he done that, we would have gotten bishop takes d5, and you may be wondering why this even works, because that just looks like a free bishop. Well, it works because of rook takes h2 here and bishop c5, and the white king is absolutely slaughtered along the dark squares, and white will have to lose all of his material. Queen takes d5, queen d4, and it's mate. You just lose queen g4, there is mate. So that's not really going to work. Anish Giri is totally winning, but queen f3, all right? 37 seconds for Gukesh. Queen b6. Anish Giri thinks for a while, plays the second best move, not the best move. Apparently the best move here was sacrificing the rook and then trying to create a bind on the e3 square. It's findable, but, you know, I'm not so sure how findable. Queen b6 is a nice move, trying to get off of the d file. E takes d5, now a nice move, rook f2, hitting the queen, the bishop, and the rook. You can't take with the rook because knight f2 is a check. So we have queen c3, super clutch. Now when he plays bishop b4, bishop f5 was a little bit stronger. Queen back to c1. Now the position is equal. Bishop f5. Gukesh, by the way, doing all of this with a minute on the clock. Unbelievable defensive precision with no time remaining. Bishop back to f8. Queen h4 check. King g8 here was apparently the winning move, but instead we have bishop h6. Rook e1. The queen takes on b2. I mean, it looks like white's position is completely falling apart. The bishop is about to be taken. The pawn on h2 is hanging. Gukesh plays h3. And he's losing after bishop e4. An amazing move from Anish. Amazing move. You can't take because there's mate incoming. You can't take with the rook either because rook f1, bishop f1, and queen h2. I mean, if I got hit with bishop e4, I would just melt. But Gukesh finds the best move and plays king g1. And now Anish here needs to set up queen b6 by playing knight to g4. Knight to g4 is the winning move. It's the winning move because it defends this. It defends against this check, and the queen attacks the bishop and it's mate. So no matter what happens here, if you take like this, you get mated along the back rank. Queen b6, and now the king has to go somewhere, and there's a mate on the back rank. Or there's a mate on f2. So knight to g4 here is the dagger. But Anish sets it up first with queen b6. And in an absolutely shocking turn of events, queen b6 doesn't just take the game from winning to a draw. It is losing on the spot to queen f6 check. Because now you get forked, you have to trade the queens like this, and all of your pieces hang. Well, this one's not hanging, just these two. And then rook e7 is in, and you're going to lose the pawns, and this pawn is going to promote. So Anish gets out with his 2 pieces. But 2 pieces for a rook is not a good balance when all your pawns are stuck, and there's a pawn 2 squares away from promotion. The pawn is going to make it all the way down to the board, and you see the players get extra time. They got that time on the 40th move. A very tense time scramble. Gukesh had a minute on his clock since move 25. Gukesh defended this position with less than a minute and about 30 seconds on his clock every single move. And right here, if Anish found knight g4, probably he wins in a few moves because of all the threats. I mean, Gukesh was defending himself with no time on the clock. But queen b6... this is what world champions do. They're clutch, They take advantage of opponents' mistakes, and Gukesh gets a win against Anish Giri. First win as world champion. An epic first game. And we're just getting started in today's recap. I mean, this was... We go to the challenger section, where one of the also Indian young stars, Divia Deshmukh, who officially is an IM, and I think maybe has 1 GM norm or 2 GM norm. She's rated 2490. I mean, she's going to be there, obviously. Playing Idis Gell, who is actually a fan of the channel, and I think I have the same birthday as him. I don't think I'm mixing that up. We are birthday twins. Yeah, he's born on December 5th. It's a good day to be born. I mean, I'm just saying. Yeah, so we go to the challenger section. We have a Nimso Indian here, Queen C2, and a very solid line chosen by both players, I have to say, like Bishop C3, Queen C3, B6, all normal stuff, Bishop G5, an extremely theoretical position that has been reached like some hundreds of times. But, you know, from the opening, it was white who had a pretty pleasant position with the bishops, everything looking nice, right? Queen C8, Rook C1, and black played C5. And these are the types of positions that, as a 2620 playing a 2490, you try to win, but it's really hard. And frankly, the same can be said if, you know, Idis was 2490 and he was playing somebody who was 2360. Like, chess is hard. It's hard to win games with black as the higher rated player. You can just make draws, but in tournaments like these, you do want to beat sort of everybody. And Divia from the opening has a very easy plan. She's just going to target the queenside pawns. Idis kind of has to decide, like, how much of a fire he's going to play with. He could play, like, A6 here, and there are some lines where, you know, for example, he can play Queen D7, and then after take, he can play, like, Rook FC8, win back the pawn, and, I mean, this is a draw in 10 moves. But something tells me he wanted to keep more tension in the position, and he did, but then Divia's just a pawn up. So obviously Idis was like, all right, look, I kind of don't want to, you know, I don't want to make too many trades. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna win this pawn back in the long run. And Divia was like, yeah, maybe you will. All right. But I'm gonna have pressure. By the way, she did not take this because of H4, right? Sorry, because of back rank checkmate, which is why she has to play H4. I skipped a step. Now, the position is still probably equal-ish. But will Idis try to play this for a win? And I mean, I'm not really sure how you would do that, but he takes a little while to get to the pawn, and suddenly he's just in a lot of trouble. Like, Divia finds a very nice, straightforward plan here of targeting the pawns with the rook and the knight together, and now black's pawns are split, and he's a pawn down. And Divia gives back the pawn, but creates a very nice central blockade, disconnecting the bishop and the rook. Now she chases the bishop around, and repositions her knight, and now targets the pawn, and now she's winning because black's king and rook are in the corner together, and this bishop might get trapped. So now black has to chase, right, the knight around, and look at this position. Now will white just win? Is white just going to walk down into the... You can't take the pawn, knight f7 was a fork. Yeah, that is exactly what she does. This is a completely winning endgame. Knight d6... takes e7, and the game is over here because if you queen, you know, Gell was trying to rely on the h-pawn. He was trying to trade off the h-pawn, but none of that is going to happen after the move king g3. The pawn is never going to get close, or you can go to h2, it doesn't really matter. You queen, and you have an extra knight. And Divia defeats 2620 rated Idis Gell. That's a monster win. I don't even think that's her highest rated win. I feel like every year these players beat people in this tournament. Like, I feel like that's ultimately what happens, that the challengers upset people in this event. Now, obviously I have more games for you. I have Prague versus Erigaisi. And in tournaments like this, we're going to get a lot of India v India. I mean, there's players all over the place in the world that are super, super strong. And we will keep moving. I mean, we have a lot of really, really strong players. Naturally, we've got to, you know, cover all their games. So this one, a Catalan. We haven't seen this yet. We saw a Catalan-esque position early in the recap, which was the Gukesh game. It was, like I said, it was Catalan-esque. I wouldn't call it exactly Catalan. Although it sort of transposed, it was never really supposed to be that. This is a pure Catalan. DC, bishop g2, c5. Okay, now it is actually becoming the position that we saw. So they transposed. This exact position was also seen in this game, right? sort of, kind of, here. And I was sort of showing you the different plans. So in that game, Gukesh went queen a4. Knight a3 is also possible. dc5 is also possible. dc5 is the move chosen in this game, and you remember in the Gukesh game, I showed you this position, right? And I said, in this position, white has tried many, many things. White has, and black has sort of defended. Generally, white is putting some pressure with knight b3, knight d4, etc. A move that I have literally never seen in my life, but it has been played. It has been played in this position, is the move knight e1. Maybe I've seen this in a distant memory, but obviously the idea is to put the knight on d3, in case it's not obvious, and also to activate this bishop as fast as possible. So rook b1, targeting the pawn on b7. Erigaisi reacts not in the best way. Like, the Stockfish didn't love the move bishop d7. It preferred the move rook d8. It preferred not weakening this, but Erigaisi is a very concrete player. And so he goes for this. But this allows white to improve his pawn structure. Right? Those pawns used to be split, and now they're like this. And it just gives, Erigaisi goes for this type of position. But it just gives white kind of a free hand. And let us watch how Pragg will play this position. Right? He goes for the bishop trade to establish what's called an outpost square, right? An outpost square is a square in the opponent's territory where your knight sits without being removed and puts pressure on important things. So bishop c5 is a nice idea. Rook a1, like he's just improving. King f1 is just bringing the king. King f1's a nice move. Could have maybe doubled on the a file, maybe slightly slow. There's the doubling on the a file. Erigaisi tries to create counterplay. c4 is a nice idea to fix the pawn exactly where it is. But ultimately, this will be decided by whether or not white is able to break through black structure. Knight c1 looking for another reroute. The knight walks around to c3. f4. Knight b5. Progress being made, but Erigaisi is defending himself. It's not pretty. His rooks are unbelievably passive, but if white is not able to break through, then that's that. And by the way, right here, a4 might have been the moment. He could have actually not just defended himself, he could have maybe even broken out. But he plays rook f8, which is, I'm sure it has like some tactical justifications. And maybe he wanted to make some squares for the king. He thought it was, or for the other pieces, it was time to transfer some pieces. But now Pragg gets a second wind with rook d6, knight c3. And obviously we see there, that was the idea. It was to bring the rooks back around. Rook a2, rook d1. Pragg repositions and repositions. But now here's the difference. The difference is on the 40th move of this game, which is when the players get their extra time, Pragg wins a pawn. And now Pragg has all the benefits of the position that he previously had, except he is also a pawn up. And his knight did a lot of work this game, Pragg's knight. I mean, it moved around and around and around, and ultimately, Erigaisi tries to create some confusion here, but white is completely winning. Check, check, check. The king is hunted into the center of the board, and the king cannot escape. Knight d5 is going to be captured, and one of the craziest storylines is actually from this game. Pragg starts this tournament with 4 out of 5 and 3 wins. In fact, he takes down 3 Indian players. He beat Pentala Harikrishna, Leon Mendonça, because I think he's Portuguese, right? And or the name derives from Portuguese. And Arjun Erigaisi. Pragg is 4 out of 5. He had a rough 2024, especially I think after the candidates. And Arjun Erigaisi started the tournament with 3 out of 4 losses. He was half out of 4. And I was like, Arjun is me. I've had half out of 4. I know the feeling. I mean, he's not me. He's a little bit better than me as a player. But I was like, Arjun, don't give up. I'm channeling all my energy. This is actually Arjun's, I think, first ever Tata steal. It's his first ever super elite round robin, except he played, I think, Chennai Masters. But he hasn't been invited to so many tournaments like this one. And he's going to catch his footing. He doesn't have a lot of time to catch his footing because today is the rest day. And tomorrow he's playing Fabiano Caruana. So yeah, not easy. Nobody ever said this tournament was easy, And in the last round, he has to play Gukesh. So that's pretty epic. Pragg having a great start. Arjun not a great start, but he will be back. Another storyline from the challenger section is Meo Yu, who is 2430 IM from China. I think she has 1 or 2 Grandmaster norms. And in this game, she played Frederick Swan, who's 2660 FIDE. And he's an incredible player. He's the younger brother of one Rasmus Swane, or Or wait, is it the other way around? No, Rasmus is definitely the older brother. Frederick is very, very good. Unless I'm, like, completely losing my mind. But, again, this was another example of a game where White, like the same as the Divia game, is the lower-rated player and is just playing a game. And, you know, Black has to sort of struggle with, like, okay, you know, my opponent played the exchange French against me, right? And is sort of just playing, you know, how much of a risk am I going to try to take in this game? Because here, the previous game, it was a 130-point rating favorite. Here's a 240-point favorite. So you do have to sometimes wonder, like, do I want to draw with Black? Am I cool with the draw, or how much am I going to play for a win? And meanwhile, Meo Yu, who I've seen even play in the States when she was like 21, 2200, she's just like, I'm just going to put my knights like right here. And I'm gonna centralize my rook, and I'm gonna see what my opponent's trying to do. First of all, we do this. Now G6. Oh, G6. Okay, so now he's weakening his king a little bit. So we're gonna come back and we're gonna regroup. Right now we're gonna start targeting. We've got Queen F3 on the cards potentially. We obviously want to bring this rook to the party as well. That rook is not playing. And here the only move for Black. Well, there's two, but both of them are ridiculous. Actually, all three engine moves here for Black don't make any sense. The third highest move here by the computer is B6. You play B6, somebody removes you from the playing hall. Squid Game style. King F8 is the other move, which if you get, if you can play King F8 in this position, you should, again, be removed. And G5. G5 at least makes sense because you're trying to get rid of the pin. White can play Bishop G3. White can also play here. And this looks absolutely horrifying. This does not look okay. Because then you're threatening things like Queen G3, and then Black resigns. So it's a fantastic position, and Frederick goes Bishop F5. And Bishop F5 is just losing. It's just losing. After Bishop F5, Bishop takes F6. And the point is that if you take like this, I just take. If you take like this, I take here. You take, I win the queen, and this is defended, so I'm up a bishop in the end. And I suppose Frederick was calculating Bishop F6, Bishop E4. But after Bishop D8, he's not in time to capture everything. Rook E5, and the queen just moves. And the rook is hanging, the bishop is a target. Rook E6 back. And ultimately, it's just White who has an extra queen for a rook. In a tactical skirmish, Meo Yu trades the rooks and defeats 2664 rated Frederick Swan. The young women of the challenger section are on fire. Meo Yu has 3 out of 5, and she's gaining like a bunch of ratings. She just lost the game, but she beat Nodirbek Kazibek in the first round as well, who's a Kazakh grandmaster. She made a couple of draws. So, yeah, I mean, she is performing extremely well, but it's a really long tournament. There are still many games to go, 8 games to go. You can start well and end poorly. You can start poorly, like Erigaisi, and still end well. Maybe you won't win the tournament, but, it is what it is. Now, here was another unbelievable game. Nodirbek Abdusatorov, who is like everybody's, he's your favorite player's favorite player, goes for a Caro-Kann defense, which you love to see. And I'm always curious what Jordan van Foreest has cooking in the kitchen, because he's always trying to play some wild openings. And in this one, it's also no different. He pushes basically every pawn, just completely trying to take the head off here. Queen G4, just an absolute bulldozer. Rook G8 from Nodirbek. And to play positions like this, you need a really good nervous system. So Nodirbek is just like, all right, I'm going for the D5 square. Or maybe the F5 square. That's what I want. Now, White is always better here. The computer always prefers these positions for White. But you kind of get to a point and you're like, I'm not really sure what to do next. And as a Caro-Kann player, I have a lot of these positions with Black, where the computer says that White is better. I don't really understand why, but the better player always figures it out with Black. The problem is, I don't usually figure it out with Black. Jordan goes B5. Okay, he's trying to strike. C5. And now, in the skirmish, it is just Black who emerges very happy. Long castling, and ready to launch a huge counterattack against White. And a huge counterattack it is, because knight d5 is played here, pawn takes, and he takes, this hangs, that's a target, and Nodirbek is like, so what? Take my bishop. Jordan's like, okay. Knight takes e5 counterattack, and the rook is coming in, and now we get probably the most, gangster sequence ever. F6, a4, pawn takes, a5, the attack is continuing, queen e8, right? b6. I mean, somebody's going to lose here. Bishop c7, bishop f4, and now rook d4. And this is really wild because this is a silent killer move. All right? Rook f4 is going to be captured, queen e5 is going to come in, and white is going to get butchered on the long diagonals. Rook takes f4, queen takes e5, and that is the end of the game. But there was a lot more that could have happened here. Like, there was a lot of really complicated lines. The queen could have gone here, and after takes, like bishop e5 is always sort of working out. There are some crazy lines where after rook d4, white could have tried to double on the other file as well. Like, white could have played some, like queen e2 and like queen here. There were some like wild lines like rook f1, king f1. You have to play like queen b5 check and queen a6. And it looks like white is maybe mating, but it all works out in the end. And Nodirbek, bishop g3, just in time with counterplay. Mate is coming, but he runs away with his king at the last moment. And ultimately, the king goes for a triumphant walk. Look at this. Every single move works out. The king runs to the middle of the board and is shielded by his own pieces. And then the endgame is winning. The endgame is winning. The king is safe. Rook d2. You either are just going to get mated here, or black is going to promote. Nodirbek wins. These are the kinds of Caro Kann games you got to win. You got to walk through fire a little bit. Not so simple, but he figures it out. And there was another upset, by the way, which was Yakuboyev versus Vaishali. I mean, I'm telling you, the young women of the challenger section. She plays the semi-Slav, by the way, which is epic because obviously you're trying to play for a win with black, right? And it's a regularly normal position. Black just, puts the bishop out, and now we see kind of the higher rated player trying to kind of play a little bit more provocatively. And what we've noticed so far is that when the quote unquote lower rated players just play their game, just play solidly, and just sort of, don't really buy into any of the bluffing. Okay, white's got a very strong initiative, but Vaishali keeps her nerves and just totally reverses the game. Like bishop c6, now the knight on c7 is stuck. Knight has to escape. And Vaishali's like, okay, counterattack. And what if I told you that from here, the game ended in 6 moves? Like, the position is completely equal. But because white tried to do so much stuff in the middle game and got himself down to 9 minutes, bishop c4, rook d7, how does the game end in 6 moves? Knight d4, knight g4. Bishop goes to a6, targeting the rook. The rook goes here. How did the game end so fast? Well, low time. Rook takes c6. And here Vaishali played a move that must have absolutely stunned her opponent. She went bishop f6. The queen is hanging. And this is hanging, but taking it allows a lot of counterplay. And I think when you get hit with bishop f6, you realize, oh my god, what have I done? But it's actually equal. It's just very, very tense. But bishop c8 is a huge mistake. Because now there is rook c6, rook c6. And Vaishali catches Nodirbek Yakuboyev. Again! The same tactic! Bishop c8 was trying to dislodge the communication of the rooks, but with 1 minute on her clock facing a substantially higher rated player, 2659, take, rook c7, the exact same trick. And the problem here is that if you take, you're mated. You're just going to lose. You can try to defend your back rank, but after here and queen f1, there is this or even this, and everything is falling apart in the white position. And that is really nasty. And the final dagger is bishop takes d4, removing the knight from the board. The queen is still hanging, and Vaishali also getting a big win against the higher rated player. So, I mean, Meo Yu, Divia, Vaishali, all scoring major upsets in the challenger section, and we will keep an eye over there on the grandmaster norm possibilities. Vaishali, of course, already a grandmaster. And this was an incredible game. One player who is just a machine, absolute killer, is Vladimir Fedoseev. If you don't know who he is, he's a Russian grandmaster, but he moved at the start of the war, and he changed his federation to Slovenia. So he's not he's not born and raised, but he represents Slovenia. He played on the Gotham Knights, and he's an incredible player. He just won the Fisher Random Freestyle Chess Qualifier, so he will actually play in the Freestyle Chess event in February next month. I'm a big fan of his, and I mean, I'm just going to show you this game. Dude has a very, very good foundational opening repertoire. He's a very good positional player. He's also very good tactically. He likes to play the Caro Kann a lot and provoke very fighting games. And in this game, it didn't work out. Fabiano Caruana played 17 moves of prep against him and just got a completely great position. This is Fabi, like, unmatched. I mean, Fabi has some of the best prep at top level, but as the middle game progressed, we got here. And I think Fabi just got a little over-optimistic. I mean, that's probably the best way to describe it, trying to kind of capitalize on the advantage. And Fedoseev, you know, just maneuvered his pieces and took his time. And Fabi got low on time. And Fedoseev maneuvered his pieces and suddenly is just winning. Like, he outmaneuvers Fabiano in the trickiest way, keeping the tension, sort of showing maybe, you know, maybe it's, I'm going to come through, maybe I'm not. And he does at the end. He just makes a run for it, and he's winning. He's winning the endgame against Fabi, which is just incredible. And he plays bishop takes d5. You cannot take because the pawn is promoting. Knight f5 check is always a problem. And there it is. And the pawn goes to e7. Fabi is able to defend himself, but not for long. You're just queening here. f4, bishop f7. He defends himself, and this is a totally winning position. King to e2, excellent technique. The king makes a run for it. The pawn makes a run for it. The knight will come back and eat the pawns. Vladimir Fedoseev just beat Arjun Erigaisi and Fabiano Caruana. Fedoseev also beat Magnus Carlsen. I think it was last year. Fedoseev just beat a 2801 and a 2803 player and has 3.5 out of 5. Let me show you the standings, all right? After the first 5 rounds. It's really incredible stuff. Nodirbek Abdusatorov and Praggnanandhaa in first place with 4 out of 5. But then you got Gukesh and Fedoseev. Hare Krishna having a great event as well. I will cover some more of his games. I mean, we have like half the field is almost from India. It's like incredible. Mendonca struggling, but he is the underdog. Crazy to see Erigaisi with 1 out of 5. But listen, I have been there before. You got the Dutch guys all together. Warmerdam, Van Foreest, Anish Giri. We've got Sarana. And I will cover everybody's games. The defending champion, of course, is Wei Yi. He's had a sort of quiet run thus far, but maybe he will make a stronger push. And we also have the challengers. And the challengers is a fun field. We obviously have Erwin Lamy, who I believe works with Anish Giri, unless I'm totally making that up. They're at least good friends. Then you have Tai Dai Van Nguyen, who's I think officially from the Czech Republic, if I'm like not mistaken, but he's even though his name is clearly Vietnamese. And these are the standings there. We have Vaishali and Meo Yu, who are just like having a great event. Faustino Oro, we'll see if he did win a game, I believe, but we'll see if he can get a little bit more consistent. That's all I have for you today. Good to be back. As always, more courses are coming out on Chessly every single week. You should check it out for free. Link is always in the description. We have beginner endgames coming this week. Then we will add anti-Sicilians for black. We're going to add the 4-knight Sicilian. We're going to add the Rui Lopez, the Spanish 4-white. All here. You can check it out. If you're already a member, you're the best. See you there. And that's all. See you all for tomorrow's recap. Get out of here.